been taking some write-in questions for those of you who don't want to be on the air with me. And I'm going to take one from yesterday, and that is this one. She says, "It's been a year since I dumped my narcissistic ex-boyfriend. Why am I still so heartbroken?" Wow. How many people can relate to that? You go through a breakup and you're trying to get this pain out of your life, and then you get the pain out of your life and you got new pain in your life. Well, there's a number of reasons for that, and one of them has a normal process to it, depending on how deeply attached you were, how much of your life was integrated with him. Think of it like a quilt. When a lot of threads are sewn together, then the attachment is deeper, and when you have a loss, it's kind of like ripping that from a lot of different parts of you. And sometimes boyfriend girlfriend relationships um, look a lot like marriage, and even too much sometimes. But they look a lot like marriage, and then it gets into your social circles, the people you hang around with, common friends, couples you hang around with, your families might be involved, all of that. And a breakup can be a really big loss. And so um, to have some time to grieve that, I think you got to kind of look at it, depending if it's really deep, you got to look at it with the same principles and patterns and processes we look at a divorce. Um, it's obviously different in some ways, but from the heart, it can pretty much feel like that. So first of all, I want to say it may not be abnormal that I hate the word heartbroken though. I would want you to be, after a year, every now and then you're still grieving in some way, because that could be kind of normal. But I'd want you, after a year, boyfriend, I'd like to see you further down the road. So it's a good question. When we see the normal process doing its work, which is you go through, and we already the stages agree with you. First of all, you're in denial. I can't believe. Then you go into bargaining. What if I had done differently? What if he could change? You do all that. And then you're protesting the problem with the anger. And then you go into this sadness, which is the depression, which is actually the letting go part of it. And you get to the acceptance and the resolution and on. Now we know, since I think it was Kubler-Ross that first postulated those stages in grief of involved in losing someone to death, we found they, applies to all grief, but it's not really linear. It's a little bit like a circle. Think of you got this room and you got corners in it, and you have different feelings. And you ever seen those little automatic robotic vacuum cleaner floor sweepers? You see them, they're about this big or so. And they just run around the room and they bounce off from corner to corner and they suck up whatever's on the floor. Well, that's kind of how grief works. You can think you're really sad and getting over it, and then you go into another corner and now you want to scream because you're so angry, and then you want to bargain and text him and say maybe we could have lunch, and maybe he's changed, and you're protesting and all of that kind of stuff. So it's not a linear process, but you got to be churning through all that. Now let's set that aside because that's normal. What you're describing may be something, I think Freud was the first one to use the phrase complicated bereavement. And that's when this gets complicated and it's not going down the normal path. The first place that I would look is, how is this loss tapping into previous unresolved losses in your life? For example, if somebody has a history of abandonment, we generally see any kind of breakup or loss of a friend or whatever expressed in much more abandonment pain than loss pain only. And it can be very devastating if somebody's got abandonment issues and they have a breakup of a dating relationship. That can be a big deal. So I would want you to go some space where you can have a healing environment on your abandonment issues. Now, here's the thing about an abandonment issues. Number two, it may be not just tapping into abandonment that's unresolved. It may be tapping into an alone self that doesn't have what we call, let me give you a technical term here, emotional object constancy, when that person's gone. Now, here's what I mean by that. Some people, they have abandonment issues, but some people have an inner emptiness of an isolation issue. And if they're not really with somebody, then they're not in solitude, but they're isolated alone. Their heart, they need more love in their heart to carry around like a savings account. There's a verse, it's one of my favorites in Proverbs. It says, "A longing fulfilled becomes a tree of life." Now, that just doesn't mean we have a longing that's fulfilled and boy, that was a tasty fruit we got to munch on. No, a tree is not the fruit. When our best relationships, when we're, as the Bible says, rooted and grounded in love, then that's like a tree. You lose a relationship, you lost a fruit or you lost a branch or a limb, but the tree is still rooted and grounded. And in life, we should be in deep supportive relationships from birth all the way on that become part of us. That's why you see a kid at about age 3 play in the backyard and doesn't have separation anxiety anymore because mommy lives inside now. So I want you to work on some good people living inside of you. So when, what'd you call him? Dump-worthy narcissistic ex-boyfriend. So when he's not in the backyard, but off the property, you still have a lot of love in your soul. Okay. Which means also, are you connected deeply to a really good supportive environment? Well, I got the 3, sneaked one in there. Number 4 is sometimes this gets to a kind of learned helplessness, powerless state, and it goes into those subjective feelings. I'm not good enough. It's always going to be this way. All of my relationship, and that turns depressing, and you get very passive. And so you're not pulling out to where you're actively recreating life and connections apart from the ex. And that can be a bad thing. So you got to get really active, even if you don't feel like it. And you got to get back into life. I didn't say back into dating, even though it may be the time to do that. I would want you doing some work before you do that. I would check out, anybody relate to this, go to boundaries.me and look at our divorce recovery or recovering from divorce webinar. I've got I think it's about 2.5 hours on this. I think it applies to you because there's got to be some work in there also on kind of getting your people picker fixed. You picked one last time and there were maybe some telltale signs. It's hard for a narcissist to hide that very long. They tend to be sprinters, not marathon runners. And narcissists sometimes can come on very strong. I've never felt so loved. They pay so much attention to me and showering me with attention and gifts. Well, yeah, but that's a that's a 100-yard dash until they got you, and then they got you, and then Act 2 kicks in with a totally different script, and you're fooled because they were so loving and wonderful and all of that. And so, I would want you to get the people picker working a little better. So maybe making some better choices. If you do go back into the dating world, again, I keep thinking of the webinars we've done on this. It's all sits on boundaries.me. But I wouldn't want you jumping right back into a relationship. I would want you safely dating a lot of people just for fun, to kind of get your toe in the water and learn what people look like and go, why do bells and whistles go off when I see that guy and not that guy? Well, that tells you something about you probably, and sometimes how narcissistic somebody may be on the other end. So those are the things I would begin to suggest. Check out another course on boundaries.me called Safe People.